Boom! Okay, have you seen Titanic? Most people know Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet as one of the most iconic couples in cinema history, but almost nobody talks about the film they made together 10 years later. And honestly, guys, I think it's even more devastating. Because this is not a movie about marriage, and it's definitely not a movie about divorce. This film is a horror film. A horror film about waking up one day and realizing you've become someone you never wanted to be. And the most terrifying part, almost nobody notices. It's happening. Not your friends, not your family, not even you. Till one day, you look around and you ask yourself, is this really my life? A film about dreams, disappointments, emotional disconnection, and fantasy of escape. And what happens when two people slowly lose themselves before they lose each other. One of the most emotionally devastating relationship film ever made, you guys. Revolutionary Road. Save this film for your next evening watch. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm a professional actress, film producer, teacher, and the founder of Authentic Transformation Academy. I help people develop real confidence, authentic presence, and powerful self-expression in life, in business, and especially in high-pressure situations. And on this channel, I explore cinema from a different perspective. I break down powerful scenes from films to analyze human behavior, psychology, leadership, and what really happens to people under pressure. Because great films, guys, are not just entertainment, they are observations of human nature. And Revolutionary Road might be one of the most honest observations ever made. The most dangerous thing that can happen to a person. Looking at Frank and April from the outside, everything seems perfect, you know? Beautiful house, beautiful kids running around, you know, stable marriage, stability, stability. The life most people spend like years trying to build. And yet, both of them are deeply, deeply unhappy. Why? Because human beings don't only suffer from pain. Sometimes they suffer from the absence of meaning. And that's what makes this film so uncomfortable. Many people secretly recognize themselves in it. Not because they hate their lives, but because at some point they quietly ask themselves, is this really the life I wanted? The life they thought they would have. At the beginning, Frank and April genuinely believe they're different. You know, more alive, more artistic, more intelligent, and more passionate than everyone around them. And honestly, this is where the tragedy begins. Because sometimes people don't just fall in love with another person. They fall in love with a future fantasy, a vision of the life they imagine they will create together. Frank and April aren't only in love with each other, they are in love with the story they are telling themselves. The artistic couple, the extraordinary life, the promise that they will never, ever become ordinary. But then, life starts happening, work, bills, children, work, bills, children, work, bills, children, responsibilities, routine, and little by little reality begins replacing fantasy. Not in one dramatic moment, of course not, but in thousands of tiny compromises. One question kept coming back to me while watching this film. When were Frank and April actually happy? And the answer kind of surprised me. Not when they bought the house. Not when they achieved stability. No. Not when they were doing what society expected them to do. The moments when they seem most alive are always moments of unknown, possibility, movement, adventure. Moments when life still feels open. Watch them carefully. They're so playful. Look at them. Curious, passionate, open. They're talking about their dreams, about who they could become, about a future that feels so exciting. And I think this is something many couples experience. At the beginning, people connect through possibilities, right? Through growth, through adventure together, through imagination. But over time, many relationships become focused entirely on logistics. Children, schedules, bills, children, schedules, bills, children, schedule, bills, responsibilities. And slowly, people stop sharing the very thing they brought them together in the first place. Their inner world, their dreams, their desires, their fears, their curiosity, their sense of aliveness. The relationship dies before the marriage does. One of the most painful things in this movie is that Frank still wants this connection. He wants to talk. He wants to argue, to fight, to discuss, to understand, But April keeps saying, no, let's not talk about this. Let's just go home. No, I don't want to talk about this. And this is where the film reveals something important. Relationships rarely die because of conflict. They die because of emotional withdrawal. When one person keeps reaching, and the other one quietly disappears. Physically, they are present, but emotionally, they are gone. By the middle of the film, April is no longer even fighting for their relationship. She's completely shutting down. And that's far more dangerous, guys. Question nobody wants to ask. Now let's talk about something controversial. Why did Frank cheat? And before any of you attacks me in these comments, I'm not saying emotional neglect justifies cheating. It doesn't. Cheating is always a choice. Yes. But if we want to understand relationships honestly, we have to ask a deeper question, right? What was Frank actually looking for? Sex? No, not only, because most people don't cheat just for sex. They cheat for a feeling of being desired, of being wanted, of being seen, admired, the feeling of being chosen fully and alive. And by this point, Frank and April are no longer emotionally connected, right? They don't share vulnerabilities, they don't share their feelings, they don't share dreams. They barely share themselves. And when emotional intimacy disappears, people often start looking elsewhere, for the feelings they no longer experience inside the relationship. Not because they stopped loving their partner, but because they stopped feeling alive inside the relationship. They stop feeling connected to their partners. And here's the uncomfortable question. What destroys relationships first? The cheating or the emotional disconnection that happened years before the cheating? There is a moment in the scene that most viewers miss. April says, "If you touch me, I'll scream." And if you watch Kate Winslet carefully, there is a split second where she almost looks relieved after shouting, almost satisfied. Why? Because after suppressing her emotions for so long, anger becomes the only thing she can still feel. And many people think anger is the opposite of love. I don't think so. It isn't. Apathy is. By this point, April isn't just angry at Frank. She's grieving herself. She's grieving the person that she could have become, the person she thought she would become, the life she thought she would have, the loneliness nobody talks about. One of the most misunderstood parts of this film is April's relationship with motherhood. Many viewers see her as selfish, cold, and even cruel. But I think the film is asking a much deeper question. What happens when a person becomes disconnected from themselves? Can they still feel connected to others? Even their own children? The tragedy isn't that April doesn't love her family or her kids. The tragedy is that she's so emotionally exhausted and disconnected that she can no longer access that love or give that love. And those are two very different things. Paris was never about Paris. For a brief moment, everything changes. April comes alive. Her eyes light up. Her energy returns. And many people think this happens because of Paris. I don't think so. Paris is hope. Paris is possibility. Paris is movement, energy. Paris is the belief that maybe it's not too late. Maybe life can still begin again. And that's why the dream becomes so powerful. But then something happens. The dream becomes real. And suddenly Frank starts pulling away. Because dreams are safe when they're here, when they just stay fantasies. Because reality requires action, requires transformation, risk-taking, loss of status, loss of certainty. And this is where their relationship truly begins to collapse. Not because they stop loving each other, but because they no longer want the same life. The only honest person in the film. The biggest irony in Revolutionary Road is that the most psychologically healthy character might actually be the man everyone calls crazy. John Givings. It's the son who has been institutionalized. The society completely dismisses him, and yet he is the only person who sees reality clearly. He sees Frank's insecurity. He sees April's despair. He sees their lies and the fact that they are performing. And he says out loud what everyone else is too afraid or too polite to admit. That's why his scenes feel so uncomfortable. Because guys, truth is uncomfortable. John has no status, no perfect career, no perfect life, but he has something nobody else has. Honesty. He is the only character who refuses to betray himself. In a strange way, John is the only truly revolutionary person on Revolutionary Road. And everyone else dreams about freedom. He is the only one willing to face the truth. The real tragedy. What devastates me most about this film is not the screaming, it's the silence. The emotional distance between them by the end feels terrifyingly real. Because there are relationships where people are still physically together, but emotionally they lost each other years ago. And the film captures this with brutal honesty. Most people think Revolutionary Road is a tragedy because the marriage fails. Listen, I don't think Revolutionary Road is really about marriage. I think it's about what happens when people stop listening to themselves, when they suppress their emotions, when they postpone their dreams, postpone their lives, when they slowly adapt to lives that no longer feel true. And maybe the most painful idea in the entire film is this. Sometimes people don't destroy relationships because they hate each other. Sometimes they destroy relationships because they are grieving the versions of themselves they never become. Frank and April didn't lose each other first. They lost themselves first. And once that happens, even love is no longer enough. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And now I am curious, what do you think actually destroyed their relationship? Was it the cheating, the emotional withdrawal, or the fear of change? Or do you think Frank and April were simply never meant for the life they created together? Let me know in the comments below, and I will read every single one of them. And if you enjoy exploring psychology, relationships, human behavior, and powerful films through a deeper lens, make sure to subscribe. Because on this channel, we don't just talk about movies, we talk about people. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.